Earlier today, the U.S.'s top diplomat in Ukraine, William Taylor, testified. So now his testimony is really important. He actually dropped a really big bombshell, something that we actually didn't know before about Donald Trump's motivations and his concerns when it came to Ukraine. See, the Republican narrative, the Donald Trump narrative, is I'm going after corruption in Ukraine. So corruption, really, really important. I want you to go after the corruption and stop that before we can actually give you that military aid. So the argument is, well, we do that all the time with other countries, when it comes to things like human rights. So why can't we do it with corruption? Okay, so now I'll get to that. But now in this next video, William Taylor, who is the top diplomat in Ukraine, described a conversation that was relayed to him last week by a member of his staff. Now, he did this during the opening remarks of his first hearing in the House impeachment inquiry. Let's take a look.
Last Friday, a member of my staff told me of events that occurred on July 26th. While Ambassador Volker and I visited the front, this member of my staff accompanied Ambassador Sondland. Ambassador Sondland met with Mr. Yermak. Following that meeting, in the presence of my staff, at a restaurant, Ambassador Sondland called President Trump and told him of his meetings in Kyiv. The member of my staff could hear President Trump on the phone asking Ambassador Sondland about the investigations. Ambassador Sondland told President Trump the Ukrainians were ready to move forward. Following the call with President Trump, the member of my staff asked Ambassador Sondland what President Trump thought about Ukraine. Ambassador Sondland responded that President Trump cares more about the investigations of Biden, which Giuliani was pressing for. At the time I gave my deposition on October 22nd, I was not aware of this information. I'm including it here for completeness. As the committee knows, I reported this information through counsel to the State Department's legal advisor, as well as to counsel for both the majority and the minority of this committee. It is my understanding that the committee is following up on this matter.
All right. So you heard that. Trump didn't care about Ukraine, only the investigations. To which I say, of course. We already knew that. But this is at least a confirmation. We knew Trump was leveraging military aid in order to get those investigations. We knew that he only cared about the political ramifications of announcing publicly these investigations into the Bidens. So he could go on TV, his surrogates can go on TV, or his staffers or aides could say, oh, look at the Bidens. They're so incredibly corrupt. And that would, of course, help him in his campaign of, hey, I'm draining the swamp, right? So now we knew that, right? Now, Republicans, like I said, they argue that we do this all the time. We leverage aid, for example, human rights issues, right? But again, that's not the same thing. The corruption in Ukraine, or supposed corruption, didn't actually involve any Ukrainians, which is strange. But instead, his political opponent, Joe Biden, and his son, Hunter, as well as, of course, a conspiracy theory about a secret server in Ukraine that would apparently or allegedly prove that it was the Ukrainians that were interfering in the election on behalf of the Democrats, with the Democrats. Again, all of these things would help Donald Trump politically, whereas starving the money to Ukraine is actually not considered to be in the best interests of the United States when it comes to foreign policy, because Ukraine is basically more of an ally against Russian aggression in that region, right? So now Ukraine, like I said, it's also not in their interests to have that security money held up, especially since you have the annexation of Crimea that had happened under President Obama. And not only that, right? So now one of the defenses Republicans use is that the Trump administration eventually did release the military aid to Ukraine. See, we didn't do anything wrong. We released aid. It actually came out in September 11th. So everything's fine. And look, he didn't even have those public investigations. So what's the deal, Democrats? Well, remember, Kiev didn't make a public statement, yes. However, that is because once Congress found out that the Trump administration was holding that money, well, there's a lot of pressure from both sides of the aisle. Democrats and Republicans got together and said, "What are you doing? What are you doing holding that security assistance hostage? No, you got to release that. We passed that through already. By law, you can't sit there and hold on to it, right?" And then we also find out that Zelensky was actually planning to make an announcement of an investigation publicly on CNN before that money was released. We knew. We knew. Once the money flowed, by the way, Zelensky, he didn't have to make that statement. So he went back and, again, like, oh, well, I got the money. So why do I need to go and make a statement that's going to look really, really bad? Remember, Zelensky's in a tough position. He can't say, no, I'm not going to do that, right? And then risk that money. And he can't say yes, because then it would look partisan. And that would put Ukraine aid in danger, which, by the way, then again, the Russians would take advantage of. So it's a very, very tough spot. But it seems to be very clear, according to Taylor's testimony, that there was extortion on the part of President Trump, that he tried to get this other country to do him a political favor in return for that military aid. And now the fact that he didn't actually succeed at that doesn't make it any less of a crime or any less bad. And if you believe that, why don't you go into a bank with the intent to rob it? You have a gun, you pull a gun, maybe even take some money, right? And pull a gun on the teller. And then in the middle of it, say, hey, you know what? Never mind. I don't feel like robbing a bank. Here, go and take this money back and just forget it all happened. Well, then we'll see if you get arrested for now, for robbery or not. Let me know how that works out. One more thing here. Now, Republicans, again, their defense, one of them painted as this, oh, it's the Democrats that are putting up the Trump haters. Oh, it's the Trump haters, the never Trumpers, and so they were against me from the outset, which is hilarious because some of the people that are testifying literally work inside the Trump administration and were Trump supporters. One of them is Gordon Sondland. Gordon Sondland did go back. He originally testified no quid pro quo, no extortion, and nothing like that. He went back and amended his testimony behind closed doors and said, yeah, okay, there was. Oops, it did happen. He also said that he was instructed by Donald Trump to say, as he did in the text released by Volker that featured William Taylor, that there was, quote, no quid pro quo. None. Just didn't happen. Now, Gordon Sondland, you can't say that he's a never Trumper because he literally gave Trump over $1 million. And in return, as it happens with a lot of presidents, he ended up getting an ambassadorship. A nice little plum position. At least until this happened, right? So definitely not a never Trumper. What about Lev Parnas? Lev Parnas recently got arrested back in October. He got arrested for setting up a shell company in order to give over $300,000 to Trump's re-election campaign. He said he'd never given to a politician before. Wasn't really interested in politics until Donald Trump. He gave all that money. There are pictures of them together. There are pictures of Parnas and Fruman along with Giuliani. Parnas worked with Giuliani. Wanted to set up a Ukrainian gas deal for one of his companies. Retained Giuliani at Fraud Guarantee. That's his, internet security company. Very pro-Trump. You cannot say that person's a never Trumper. Okay? And the only reason, by the way, that Parnas has decided to give up and testify is because Donald Trump threw him under the bus. Oh, that guy, Parnas, never knew him. Never met him. Don't know who that guy is. Despite having, of course, pictures of them together. So now he's under that bus along with many others who had worked in the Trump administration, who were part of the Trump administration. Again, you have national security he was on the National Security Council, Lieutenant Colonel Vindman, who also said, hey, look, I was on the call and what I heard was disturbing. And so I made a report. And so I was worried about that. And I'm one of the people that the whistleblower had referenced being on the call and being very concerned about what I heard on that July 25th call. So, but no, he's a never Trumper now, even though he literally worked in the Trump White House. But see, here's the thing, right? Look, Donald Trump sees anybody who's not willing to lie for him on this as a never Trumper. Well, they're against me. Well, they're not lying for me, so they must be against me. They must be a never Trumper. They must be a Trump hater. In reality, these are officials who are, professionals who have worked for both Republican and Democratic administrations, and they were concerned. They're like, hey, that seems to be kind of illegal here. Maybe we should report it because Donald Trump appears to be breaking the law. You cannot ask foreign governments for personal favors or political favors. And that's what this is. And you have people like Sondland, Taylor, and others who, some of them, yes, might have been Trump supporters. But guess what? Michael Cohen was also a Trump supporter, and he's sitting in prison now. This is what happens. And Trump has fully turned on him, by the way. This is what happens. They look at that and they think, well, I'm not going to prison for that guy. I'm not doing this. Now, if you think it's bad for Trump now, remember, this is only the first day. And we already have incredibly damning testimony against Trump. So it's kind of likely that it might get worse. Hey guys, hopefully you enjoyed that free video. Now I'm going to have to ask you a favor. Between the demonetization and the YouTube algorithm messing around with view counts, etc., we're having a hard time adjusting to the new YouTube reality, which is where you guys come in. See, we have a Patreon, patreon.com/TYTNation, set up to help us rely on you guys, the viewers, instead of big corporate ads. Look, you know the show. You know how I'm not in favor of big corporations anyway. So help us transition away from relying on the ad model to pay the bills and sign up to be a patron, patreon.com/TYTNation. That goes a long way to help us keep the lights on. And you guys will know that you're supporting independent, progressive media.